This is Jess, and you're listening to the Pumping Podcast. This week, I am talking to two moms who have two daughters and a cat. I am talking to Katie and Christina Bailey. I found them on Instagram and on YouTube, and they title themselves in their videos, Baby Bailey Mama Drama, which is just the cutest thing. We talk about their journey through reciprocal IVF and motherhood, and what that looked like through the eyes of two moms, a gay couple. It has not been an easy journey for them, and it continues to be a challenge as they're looking toward bringing in a third child into their home. But this story is especially important as it sheds a light into the uniqueness that every home and every family can have. Love is love. I support that, and I hope their story opens your eyes too. So here they are, Katie and Christina Bailey. Hey ladies, I'm so excited. So today I'm speaking with Katie and Christina Bailey, and I'm really, really excited to chat with you guys. I've been following you a little bit and stalking you a little bit on Instagram, and I've watched all of your videos. But for those who haven't watched any of your videos and don't know anything about you, why don't you, in your own words, tell our listeners a little bit more about yourselves?
We are a two-mom family coming to you from California. We love to travel. We have two daughters from Reciprocal IVF, which means we used my eggs, and my wife, Katie, carried our daughters after they were fertilized by a donor sperm. So we are really loving sharing our journey with everybody and supporting anyone else who might be going down that path or just has any questions about like parenthood and as well as traveling, which is kind of a new hobby for us that we've really enjoyed doing as a family.
You guys are about to go off somewhere, aren't you?
Yes, we are. We're actually leaving Saturday for another little adventure.
Oh my gosh, that's exciting. And I'm so pumped because I've only had my same-sex couple. I had two dads on, so now I have my first pair of two moms. So I'm really excited.
Okay.
Mainly, this
Yeah.
podcast is focused more toward moms, just because that's the main focus. But it was nice to have two dads on and hear their story, which was a whole nother thing. It was crazy,
Right.
but it's really exciting to hear your story. And how did you two meet?
We met online on a dating website.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So funny. I met my husband before that whole boom kind of happened. And so I never experienced any dating websites or any of that. It's such an interesting world to me. It's crazy.
Yeah. I think it's like really common now. Even when we did it, it wasn't quite because that was what, like 8 years ago now. So it wasn't quite the norm then. But now, like with the apps they have, it's really
It probably
common.
would have been a lot easier for us to even find each other with the apps they have now because they have apps that are specific just for lesbians or gay guys or pretty much anything. I feel like there's an app for
Yeah, they have
every
Yeah.
they have I
specific
think there's a
type.
Christian one. I heard recently there's one for farmers. It's It's so crazy. Really neat though. Did you sign on to those kind of expecting or wanting to find your wife, or did you just want to have a good
No,
time?
I had like no expectations. Just it was hard to find like girls to date because I don't neither of us like look like we're gay. So it was like really hard to meet someone, you know. Well, yeah, there's that stereotypical I don't know, expectation sometimes. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So now we call it just femme.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
both
call it,
femmes.
say that again?
So we're both femmes. That's kind of and within the
That's the
lesbian
term.
world, there's a lot of different lingos that you go by.
Yeah.
And so femmes searching for another femme is
Yeah.
something that people will put in like descriptions if like that's what they're looking for.
Well, I think that not only are you a same-sex couple who is bringing children into the world and starting a family and talking about it outwardly, which is a beautiful thing in itself, but you're breaking that typical mold of what people who maybe are not used to seeing lesbian couples together aren't used to seeing that. And I think it's really, really cool. And I think it's a risky thing for you guys to do, but so empowering. And I don't know, when I saw your Instagram and then started to listen to all of your videos, I just thought I have to talk to these two because you're just, I don't know, I think you're really, really working at something it needs to be out there more. I mean, young kids need to hear about this, and it's so important.
Well,
Yeah,
thank you.
we agree.
So I want to go back in time a little bit and explain to me what life was like before you decided to start a family.
Sure.
Okay. Life before kids was, I guess we were really focused on traveling then. We took a break for a while when we started the journey to having kids, and I think it kind of got lost down that rough path that we were on. So we didn't really think about travel at all. But when it was just the two of us, we were saving a lot of money and we were pretty much gone every weekend. I think we were signed on to like every single like deal site that you could think of, like Groupon and Living Social, and we were always finding these deals.
Really? That's
Yeah.
how you were going?
Yeah, so we were always finding like a deal for the weekend that we could go do any type of hotel. We spent a lot of time at the beach together, and yeah, things just kind of rather moved quickly. I mean, we only knew each other for less than a year, and then we were married, and it was a few years later that we started the journey to having kids. But before kids, it was just a lot of traveling, and we both picked one place that we wanted to go out of the country. And that was like our big travel that we said we wanted to accomplish before we had children. So I picked Ireland and Katie picked Italy.
Mhm.
And so we did those travels, and then it was time to
How
settle
long were
down.
you together before you decided to have kids?
So Kennedy was born in 16, so
Right.
about 4 years, 5 years. Yeah, about 5 years, 4 to 5 years.
Wow.
Mm.
Out of curiosity, what was your favorite place that you've been?
Before kids or since we've had them?
Just in general.
Just
I
in
think
general?
before kids.
Oh, before kids?
Mine was
Um,
the island of Capri in Italy.
Oh, yes, I've actually been there.
Really,
Isn't it
it's
just stunning?
amazing. Yeah.
and I think my favorite place before kids is probably still Hawaii.
Christina loves Hawaii.
I do. It's
Uh,
Hawaii and Disneyland. Like
We've been to
that's just
Hawaii
who I
so
am.
many times. I'm just like, this is awesome. I mean,
That's
it's
so funny.
beautiful. But
It is great.
I went to Hawaii a couple years ago and I loved it too. It's just for you guys, you're a little closer being on the West Coast, but for us, it was so far to travel. And my husband's Puerto Rican, so to be honest, like I kind of like Puerto Rico better. But I think that's also because you can just get there and hop, skip, and a jump, and you're in Puerto Rico, you know.
right.
True.
Um, but there is something magical, like you feel like you're in a different world in Hawaii.
Yeah.
It's
Hmm.
just
Yeah.
Yeah.
there's something about it.
I forget about how far it is for people because I guess it doesn't really get much closer than where we are.
Yeah. Still like 5 hours for
Yeah.
us, but I guess like nothing.
Yeah, I mean, we had to go. I think we had 3 flights, so we went from New York to Vegas, Vegas to I think Honolulu, and then Honolulu to Kauai because we went to Kauai.
Wow. That's
So
yeah,
it
that's a
Yeah,
lot.
was
that's
a
a
long
lot.
day. And then you get there and it's like morning. So
Yeah.
I think we took a quick nap and then it's like off we go. It's
Yeah.
time to
Exactly.
time to have the day. And you're like, oh.
Yep.
Oh gosh. So take us through the process. You can go into the nitty gritty or not, but just take us into the process of first starting off your family with Charlotte.
Kennedy.
With Kennedy.
Yeah, with Kennedy. Kennedy's our
Or I'm
oldest.
sorry,
Yeah,
We can
no,
start at
Ken-
Charlotte
we
if
can
you
start
want.
with Charlotte. We've been going
No, no,
backwards.
with Kennedy.
Okay.
Okay,
And then we
okay,
have a fertility
okay,
doctor,
got
and
it.
Katie needs some help sometimes. Okay, you can do it.
This is more Christina's
This
thing
is
than
why I
mine.
do. This is why I manage all our social media.
I'm just here.
I love
Katie's
it.
here when I need her. She comes on. She's not needed. I just handle it all.
I love it.
Um, so when we were thinking about how we wanted to make our family, we thought about what was most important to us at the time. And Christina really had this desire to have genetically related children. Like she just wanted to pass down her beautiful blonde hair, apparently.
Okay.
I can understand that.
And I didn't really have as much of a desire to have genetically related kids. Like I was, interested in a variety of different options. But I was wanting to know what it was like to be pregnant. So when we heard about reciprocal IVF, we were like, this is perfect because then Christina gets her genetic child and then I get to experience pregnancy. So that's kind of how we decided. And
Did you have, before you made this decision and made it public, did you have a lot of people coming at you with, "Oh, are you gonna have kids? Oh, how are you gonna have kids?" Or did people just kind of let you be?
no, actually, no one really asked us much about having kids that I recall. And most people
Oh,
just assumed that we were adopting if we were.
Hmm.
yeah. I mean, the only people who would have known are like our family and friends, since we didn't really join social media until after our first round of IVF failed. So at that point, we were already on the journey, and we didn't really
Mm.
like start. Whereas like this time, we're kind of talking about, if you fast forward to where we are now, thinking about baby number three, and we're announcing that, we're exploring all these different methods to having a child. So that kind of like invites people to kind of put their input in, whereas before there wasn't really any time to do that.
Yeah.
um, Definitely encountered like a lot of negativity just by being gay, and deciding like how we're having the kid. And I feel like everyone has an opinion of how they should make your family, even though like you don't ever
Hmm.
give your opinion to anybody else. So it's kind of like when you tell somebody, oh, you're going to have a child this way, and people ask you, well, why aren't you adopting? Well, do you know how much adoption is? Like, it's double the amount of what we were going to pay to do this process. And like, I don't ask you when you say you're trying to have a baby, are you going to adopt? Like that doesn't cross
Right.
my mind. So it's interesting how people are like, I don't think they think it in the long run, because I know I probably wouldn't have if I wasn't gay. But it's like you really have to think about what you're saying. Like, yeah, adoption is great, but it is very expensive. Like, it is crazy expensive. And you
Mhm.
wouldn't think the world would be that way, but we know all the costs. We've looked up every
I
detail.
feel like it should be.
It should be, but it's double the cost if we just use our own bodies to create a child.
Yeah, of course. Well, and I think in certain situations, people feel like it opens up a door to just put their opinion in and ask whatever they can. I mean, I've heard many moms, even just that are going through birth in a normal, quote unquote,
Mhm.
normal sense, they get their fair share of opinions thrown at them too.
Yep, that's
Why
true.
are you breastfeeding? Why aren't you breastfeeding? Why,
Mhm.
are you going to get the epidural? Why aren't you? There's
Yep.
like all this, crazy opinion stuff. But so you decided to go with the reciprocal IVF.
And then we walked in thinking it was a for sure thing. It really hadn't been done at our clinic before, but they totally understood the process and like why we wanted to do it. And they even told us like this isn't much different than us doing regular IVF for couples. It's just
Mhm.
we're putting the embryo in someone else instead of back inside the person who the eggs came from. So we knew the odds were in our favor. We were both young, healthy background. There was nothing really in our way to where this wouldn't work. And one of the reasons that we also chose reciprocal IVF was because the percentage of us getting pregnant was very high. And whereas IUI was something that I know many other lesbian couples do, the percentage is very low of getting pregnant. And we didn't want to go down that path. We wanted to do like the cost saving path, have a baby, like not waste a lot of time because it's what we want to do right now. But then we just encountered all these problems that we didn't think were going to happen. And it was really emotional. It was like physically draining on our bodies. Like we had injected hormones into ourselves. We had, gone through all these needles and all these like high hopes that we had. And then when we got the call that things weren't going right, we just kept holding on to like this little bit of hope that things were going to go well for us and we were going to experience some type of miracle. And then we got the phone call that it was just over. And like your mind just went so many places like, oh my gosh, like we're not having a baby right now. Like, what do we do? Like, we just poured in all this money, we poured in our hearts, we poured in our bodies. Like, what do we do now? And I think it was just like a mourning process.
That was that the egg didn't take. in Katie's
Yeah,
body, correct?
it wouldn't fertilize, and they tried everything they could to try to save the few eggs that had survived in the end, and it just they couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And so after exploring many other options, because we felt, I mean, I personally felt like there was something wrong with me because they were my eggs. Um, the person who was in the lab trying to fertilize the eggs said he couldn't come to a conclusion of what went wrong. He said it could have been the sperm, it could have been the egg quality. He said there really just wasn't a conclusion that he could come to. So it just kind of made me feeling like I wasn't meant to reproduce in this world. Like maybe it's a sign that I shouldn't try to have children. Like we should stop. So I felt really sad about that. Since my childhood dream was to like reproduce myself. Yeah, and like it had just come to an end. We came across embryo adoption, which we thought would be like the best idea for us because it wouldn't be genetically related to either of us. Um, and then there was also the money factor that played a role in this, where we would get 3 embryos. They would try to make sure that, the people who were donating looked like us, so the kids would look like us. And if the embryo didn't take, and I think 12 weeks of pregnancy didn't result in that, you would get your money back, or you could get 3 more embryos. So it
Oh,
seemed like a
wow.
win-win situation for
Mhm.
us. Like that was the path we were going on. We were good. We signed all these papers. We read about the donor profiles. Like we knew they didn't show us pictures, but we knew like everything there was to know about these people, like their hobbies, their genetics. I mean, I remember reading through like 8 pages of paperwork on each
Mhm.
donor. It was crazy, and how many kids they both had. Um, and then like the transfer day came, and we were sitting. I remember sitting in the waiting room feeling really sad. We were surrounded by like all these couples that were much older than us. And I just remember thinking, like, how come they can have a baby and we can't? Like, how come we have to adopt somebody else's eggs and we can't use mine? Like, I just remember feeling really sad. And I remember we didn't even look at each other. Like, it was supposed to be a really happy day, but we didn't feel happy.
Mm.
Um, and when we got back to the room where we were going to do the transfer, our nurse had walked in, who had been with us through the whole process. And I remember I just started crying on her shoulder. And then I looked over and Katie was crying. And our nurse just kind of told us, like, you don't have to do this. Like, you could try IVF, try another round and see if it works. Like, I really feel like your eggs are fine. Like, I don't think it's your eggs. I think you should try one more time.
Well, because I
Yeah.
was gonna ask you, they didn't actually before you decided to get to this point, they didn't do any sort of testing or whatever to say
Mm.
that you definitely couldn't use your eggs, right? It was just kind of an assumption.
Right. Yeah, it was just an assumption. And I think it was kind of like I put myself through so much. So it was kind of like I just felt bad for myself. And I was just kind of pushing myself further and further down, like, no, you're not good enough. Like, no, your body just isn't meant to do that. So just give up. That's kind of what I told myself.
Mhm.
But after she walked in and the crying and everything happened, we were like, okay, let's do it. Let's try one more time. Like, if it doesn't work this time, like, we're going through with embryo adoption. Like, we felt terrible that they had to put these embryos, like, refreeze them. Like, we felt awful. I wrote this really long email apologizing to the director of embryo adoption, like, just pouring my heart out for her. Like, I feel like a terrible person for backing out on you. Like, you've done so much for us. And she was incredibly supportive and even encouraged us to come back if that was what we decided on a different day.
Mhm.
Um, so it was really nice feeling supported by everybody at the clinic, and just knowing that they were going to try everything they could for the second round to make it work. Like they changed our medications, they did like more monitoring. They had like a plan for when the eggs were retrieved. Like they were going to do half regular fertilization, which is where eggs are just in a dish with the sperm, and then they were going to do half ICSI, where they're actually injecting the sperm into the eggs. So they were going to do that on the batch that they retrieved from me. So it's like we had this plan in place. So I just told myself, like, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. And like, if this doesn't work, like, it's not meant to be. We're going to do embryo adoption.
Right. And did you have any say over the sperm donor or any of that connection or no?
We actually went back and we got new sperm because oh, sorry. We went back and got new sperm because we didn't want that to be a factor. I mean, they knew that there might be something wrong with it. So just the chance that there might be was a good enough reason for us to go back and get new sperm.
Mm.
So we started all fresh. Like we went back to the website, we searched for more donors endlessly. We found somebody who looked somewhat like Katie for the donor, and we didn't end up, I mean, we didn't have any sperm left of the other one anyway because they had opened up both files we had to
Mhm.
try to get those eggs to fertilize during the first round. So we really were at nothing at that point anyway. So we had to get new sperm.
Mhm. So at that point, did you go ahead and try to use your eggs for the second time?
We did. So when we started all over again, we did another egg retrieval with the same eggs, with Christina's eggs and the new donor sperm, and everything went according to plan, which was great. And we knew what to expect. And so doing it the second time was a lot easier. Um, but we knew exactly, what how the medications were going to make us feel, all of that. So it was smooth sailing through the IVF process the second time.
And was this the time, I don't know if I'm getting confused with Charlotte or Kennedy, but was this the time that you had to receive the injections as well?
Yes. So after we got well, there are injections all through this process, but you continue injections up to 12 weeks of pregnancy.
Wow.
It's a lot.
And that's just to build up your system and keep your system pumping with hormones?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. For me, the hormones that I was receiving were to like make a really
Like
cozy
lining.
uterus.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the hormones that I received were to like really make my eggs larger and like produce as many eggs as possible that were hopefully good quality. So we are both on two totally different hormones, which had two totally different side effects. Like I would say mine had more side effects. Um, and like to this day, it was funny. We were just talking about this, how I just got my hormones balanced again because after doing 2 rounds of injections, my hormones were all over the place. Like I used to have great skin. My acne came back like no other. I had like an irregular cycle. Like it was a mess. So I finally got my hormones under control. Whereas Katie's, I feel like the site of injection is where she still feels pain up to today. Um,
Mhm.
and then, of course, dealing with just being pregnant. I mean, you get so many hormones that way.
Yeah.
Right.
So, two totally different ways of like seeing. I mean, it's hard to understand how the other person feels because it's totally different.
But either way, you have a house full of two ladies who have normal hormones, and then they're getting hormones injected on top of that. It's like,
Right.
Exactly.
It's a
So
lot.
many hormones going on in this house.
my gosh, man, oh man. But you did finally get pregnant, and you had a successful pregnancy with her, correct?
With Kennedy, yeah, we did have some complications. So after we got the confirmed pregnancy test,
Well, and we put in two
oh yeah, sorry, we put in 2 embryos. And
because we wanted twins.
I don't know why.
I don't know why. Now it seems crazy, but we had this plan that we were going to have boy girl twins, and it was like two for the price of one. So let's just do it. Instant family. Let's go for it.
So yeah, there were 2 embryos, and then we got the positive pregnancy test, and like a while after that, there was one night where I woke up and it was like I had a miscarriage. And so we went to the doctor the next day, like to confirm. We just assumed there was nothing in there. Um, and there was a little heartbeat,
Mm.
and that little Kennedy. But so obviously one of the embryos left, and it left a big blood clot. And so the beginning of the pregnancy was pretty scary because this blood clot was so huge next to the tiny baby, that they were worried that if that blood clot did like detach and leave, that it would take the baby with it. Um, so there was that. But eventually little Kennedy grew bigger than the blood clot, and then the blood clot wasn't just a little thing. But yeah, so that was a little scary.
Yeah,
But she made it.
we were pretty much a high risk pregnancy, I think, up until almost like third trimester, which is when we started to feel relief because the baby was bigger than the blood clot. And they said at that point, like, you don't need to be worried anymore. But I think in our minds, we were just kind of preparing ourselves for the worst, like the whole entire way, because we had already been through so much that we're like, okay, the baby might not be here. Like, it's okay. Even though I don't think there's any way to prepare yourself for that. Like, I think just trying not to get too excited was, I think, us, like, our entire pregnancy. And then I remember, like, when she was born, feeling like a huge relief, like, oh my gosh, there was actually a baby in there. Like, she's alive, she's normal. Like, it was just amazing, like, knowing everything we had been through, and she turned out like this perfect baby. Like, it still blows my mind. Like, we saw her, like, her first picture in a little dish, and like, here she is, like a little human. Just blows my mind.
Oh, that's so sweet. And the craziest part is that was such a roller coaster that you went through just with Kennedy, and then you decided to try to have Charlotte, and
Yeah.
the adventures continued. Oh my gosh.
I know. Yeah. We thought for sure the second time around, like, things were going to go so smooth for us. Like, we got to kind of like jump ahead in the process, which was nice because from the embryo batch, I think we had like 9 embryos frozen, and they said they were all really great quality. Like, all those kids, they could turn into babies. Like, it's fine.
Mm.
So we kind of jumped ahead in the process. Like, I didn't have to do any injections. It was just all poor Katie over here, preparing her lining for a baby. And we took one out of the freezer. They thawed it and they transferred it to Katie, and we got the positive pregnancy results. Like, I remember getting the call from the nurse saying you're pregnant, and I was like crying, so happy. Um, and then Katie has to do routine blood work just to make sure the hormone levels are doubling like they should. Um, and that's just a routine. And we got the phone call from our nurse that things weren't looking normal, but to not be alarmed, and that Katie would just go back for an extra pregnancy test or an extra, like, blood test. It's fine. So I remember both, like, eagerly, like, waiting by the phone for our nurse to call us, like, oh my gosh, hope these results are okay. And unfortunately, it was a really sad phone call that we weren't really expecting. So we had, like, gone through this moment of, like, celebrating, and then we were told that the results were showing that it was either an ectopic pregnancy, which is very dangerous if we didn't see the warning signs. Like, she told us to immediately go to a hospital if we saw these signs happening. Um, and then also a miscarriage. So we were kind of waiting for either one of those. And I know it was really hard for our nurse to tell us that because she loves us. I mean, absolutely knows everything we've been through. And I think she just felt awful that after going through all this with Kennedy, like, she had to deliver this really terrible news. And but that, I mean, their clinic, they know exactly all the warning signs. So it's like they know what these test results show, and they said they're almost never wrong. I mean,
Mm.
so just be careful, keep us updated, like, let us know, we're here for you when you want to do another transfer, when all this is over, like, we can plan ahead. So we just kind of waited, like, the days went by, and we were just kind of waiting for Katie's body to, like, tell us what was going on.
Yeah. Then there was one day when, again, I did start bleeding. And so we went, it was like deja vu of with Kennedy. We went to the doctor to do an ultrasound, again, to confirm there was no baby. And there was Charlotte's heartbeat, like, these kids.
Yeah.
And
They're
the doctor,
resilient, to say the least.
yeah, and the doctor was like shocked. Everyone was shocked. And he's like, yeah, it's a good heartbeat.
Yeah. He
Healthy
said it was
little baby in
the
there.
second time he had seen this happen in his whole career. And I don't know how many babies have come from that clinic. Like,
Yeah.
he said this is the only second time he has ever seen that happen, and how the tests were actually, like, wrong. So
Yeah.
he was just as shocked as we were.
Yeah,
Wow.
but it's interesting because then on Instagram we did hear, because, like, we're connected with so many people, but there are people that have had an experience like this where the, like, hormone tests are just out of whack, but it's still results in a pregnancy, but apparently not too common.
Yeah. And she is kind of our crazy little child. So it kind of makes sense that she would trick us in the beginning. Just put us on a wild ride.
Yeah.
Well, and other than that, Katie, what was pregnancy like for you? Was it fairly smooth, quote unquote, minus all of that stress?
Yeah, I mean, compared to what I've seen, like my own friends go through, my pregnancy with Kennedy was honestly pretty easy. Like I wasn't that sick. I wasn't super tired. I was okay. Charlotte, man, I was just so sick, like the whole pregnancy, morning sickness all day, every day.
We thought she was a boy for sure. And we
Because it
were
was so
both
different.
shocked. Yeah, we were shocked to see she was a
Because it
girl.
was just such a different pregnancy. Yeah, I didn't
Mm.
love pregnancy the second time quite as much the first time.
So, how do you go through both of those two experiences and then potentially decide to do it again?
Well, I am perfectly good with our two kids. They're more than enough for me. But Christina over here wants four,
We're
which,
compromising on 3.
yeah, like four is out of the question.
I see. I see.
Well, also being a teacher, I handle so many children all day, and I come home to our kids. And I feel like it's just my mentality that I can handle many
Yeah.
children. So the more the merrier, in my opinion.
Oh, that's so funny. And do you plan on trying reciprocal again, or what do you think you're
We have
is
no idea what we're
We
doing. It's
and
kind of a mess.
it's so funny because I was just talking to my mom about this the other day. I was like, it's okay because we have all this time still to like plan of how we're gonna have our third child because like we have like the month picked out of where like we would want a child born since everything is calculated. We can actually plan for that.
right?
Um, but my mom was like, you guys have been talking about this for 3 years. Like you haven't decided yet. And I was like, no, we haven't. And there have been times like throughout like the past 4 years where we constantly talk about like, so we're gonna have the fourth child this way, right? Or I mean the third
What?
child. Sorry, we're gonna have a third child this
It's in
way,
your mind,
right?
Katie. I don't
I
know.
mean, I was talking about the fourth one for a while. Well, because I said, oh, we'll have the third one this way and we'll have the fourth one this way. And that's when she'd be like, I'm not talking to you about this.
Yeah, we just have to shut her down.
So yeah, we keep exploring all the options and then definitely ruling some out on our list just because like the price is too crazy, or like the emotional ties are too crazy for us, especially now we have to think about how we have two other children in the house. So thinking about like what is the best option for everyone in our house.
Hmm.
Because like one of the paths we were looking at was maybe like fostering to adopt, but for Katie and I being so emotionally attached to even like little embryos on a picture, like I
True.
don't think ourselves and our kids could get attached to a child knowing that they could go back with their family, which is what the system is meant for. Um, so just like things like that, like ruling things out that we know that can't be good for our family.
And how old is Kennedy now and Charlotte?
Almost 2 and almost 4. Their birthdays are in a couple months.
Almost
Yeah,
two.
and we wanted a child to be 3 years apart from Charlotte. Like Kennedy and Charlotte will be 2 years apart, and then we're like, okay, 2 years apart is great, but it's a handful.
Yeah.
So let's do 3 years apart because it's not too crazy. But that way we don't hopefully have too many kids in diapers at that point. Like that's another plus. Like there's just
Right.
so many diapers. Like now we're down to one child in diapers. Yeah, the diapers like on traveling is crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, what inspired both of you to decide to share your story on social platforms?
Started because like when we were having a hard time with reciprocal or with IVF not working, we turned to the internet and at we looked at YouTube and we looked at Instagram and we were able to find people that were going through similar experiences. So and they were straight couples, they were gay couples, they're just all kinds of people also struggling with creating a family. And so that helped us so much. And we were able to connect with these people and find support and kind of that shared experience. And so that's when we started sharing our story more on Instagram and eventually on YouTube. And it just kind of went from there. It was just, we wanted to be able to eventually help people the way that they helped us.
Have you experienced any sort of pushback in the social world and since starting your family and like trolls and all of that crap? And how have you dealt with those
Oh,
pressures?
there's, yeah, there's always trolls and people who leave rude comments. But it doesn't really bother us too much. Both of us just think about like how sad these
Yeah.
people must be in their
Hmm.
own lives that they feel the need to go on the internet and write rude things to someone they
Hmm.
don't even know. So we just kind of try to approach it in that way, and we just report the comments, and Instagram takes
Yeah.
care of it.
Katie says that now, but there have been moments when we were both hurt by comments where they would really get to us. Like I
Yeah, I think we've
remember
grown from it.
like publishing my story on like Love What Matters and getting like reading through all the vicious comments on Facebook where they had published it. And it was hard. I mean, everyone had their own opinion, like, oh, why are they even sharing the cost of their kids with the public? Or like, oh, they had to go buy a baby, so what? Or, oh, those kids, they had problems having kids because, they weren't meant to have kids and those kids should have a father. And yeah, it was hard. And I think after that, I was like, I need to stop
Yeah.
reading comments. Like, just let people be. And we don't really try, we don't respond to them. Just kind of let them be. And a lot of times people who support us end up responding for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah,
And
we're like, thanks. Bye.
yeah, so I mean, it is nice we have the support. And I don't know, it's just hard. Like there is no just one way to make a family, and everyone has their opinions, but I also know that like us being open to sharing like every little detail is helping someone. Um,
Absolutely.
so I just try to keep that in mind. Like I know we're helping somebody out there, so even though there's like a negative comment, like I know there's a lot of positive
Yeah.
too.
Just focusing on the people who you are impacting.
Exactly.
And I mean, both of you have such beautiful hearts and you're open and you're free to communicate how you're feeling and what you're going through, positive or negative. It's just so wonderful that you're sharing it with the world. What advice would you give other same sex couples out there who are either wanting to go into this process of starting a family or who are in it, in the thick of it? What advice would you give?
My advice would be follow your heart and your intuition when you're deciding what you want to do. So there are so many different ways to create a family, and not one is better than another. So it's really important that you and your partner just look at what feels right to you and do that.
And my advice would be to always be open with each other and listen to what the other person has to say, um, and just try to prepare for anything to happen, because we went into it with the mindset that nothing bad could happen, and it did. So it's good to be aware that anything can happen to anyone, which is kind of like not the greatest advice, but it's the real
Yeah.
advice.
Well, I even recently interviewed another mom who had said that, she just kind of thought, I'm just going to have a baby. Like, it's going to be great. I'm going to have a little baby. I can take her to work with me 'cause she's a fitness person. She's like, it's going to be great. We'll just have this baby. And she kind of thought, it was going to be this Disney picturesque, picture world. And it just wasn't. And she went through her own challenges. And it's mind blowing to me because so many moms, dads, families, that every family has their own story. And it's fascinating to hear. And even people who have a quote unquote normal, pregnancy experience, normal birthing experience, there's something at the ladder that turns out to be a challenge, whether it's breastfeeding or whatever it is. It's like there's always something. Um, so I just think it's wonderful that you're sharing it with everybody. Do you ever get sick of telling your story? I mean, you probably tell it so much. I was just sitting here thinking, My gosh, do they get sick of going through this?
um,
No,
I mean, I'm mostly the one who ends up telling it, and I don't
got
think
really good at
I
it.
don't think it ever gets old for me. I think it just shows like how strong we are and how strong our girls are, because one day we will tell them the story of how they were born, and I think it'll show them that they can take on anything because they've already beat so many odds just to be here today. So when people ask us like, "Oh, how do you plan on like helping your kids like, you know, go about like the comments that they'll receive about their family, or if they receive like any negativity about their moms being gay." And I think just sharing that they're from a strong family, like
Yeah.
we have really beat the odds just to be where we are today. And I see that as like a real pro. I'm really, I'm pretty happy with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and in going into potentially trying to have a third, I mean, I think it's just such a strong thing that you guys are going through, and you have to almost put on this like coat of armor to protect yourself. Um, but I think that the girls, and maybe if you have another girl or boy, whatever it turns out to be,
Yeah.
I think they will have that strength inside them.
Mhm.
Yeah, we're kind of hoping this time it'll just be smooth sailing. We're hoping that it was like third time's a charm. Like that's what
Oh,
we're really hoping for. But
let's
we're also
see.
prepared that like what will be thrown this time? Like I just don't know
Yeah.
at this point.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like bring it on. You're ready,
Yeah,
Mhm.
right?
Exactly.
exactly. As long as a healthy baby is here in the end, like
Yeah.
we can get through anything.
And Katie, do you plan on carrying again, or that's still up in the air?
It's still up in
It's
the
still up in
air.
the air too. Yep.
Yeah,
I'm
we don't know.
prepared to take on pregnancy if I need to.
I was gonna say, Christina, do you have any desire or no?
um I told Katie, I said I could go through life not caring and not be bothered by it, but I don't want to go through life without having another child. So if I would need
So
to
it's
carry,
basically if I just
I can carry.
refuse, then
Well, she told me before that she was like, I'm not having another child. And I was like, okay, I'm having the
that's when I
child.
was pregnant last. I was like, I'm not getting
No,
this.
even the other night you said I'm not carrying. And then I'm like, okay, so are you for sure not carrying? Because like, oh, let's do this announcement on Instagram. And she's like, what? I never said I wasn't carrying. And I was like, okay, so we're still undecided. Like, let's figure it out together before we announce that. Like, we'll wait to announce that later on with whatever path we decide to go on.
Oh, it's so funny. What's been the best part of putting your life out there for the world to see?
I would say connecting with so many people. We've actually met a lot of these people in real life.
Mhm.
And I would say just like the past experience, we met another lesbian family on our travels in November. And I think it was amazing for Kennedy to see that this little boy had two moms. And for us, that's great because we have so many amazing friends where we live, but none of them are a two mom family. Um, and she doesn't see it. She watches so many Disney movies that have a prince marrying a princess and
Mm.
yada yada. So she doesn't see that anybody has like these two moms. So for me, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I wish we had families like this closer to us. But I'm also very happy that we get experiences like this
Mhm.
and that
Yeah.
she can see there's two families,
Mhm.
two mom families,
Yeah.
you know.
It's so crazy that you're able to even like make these connections with these people. Like the family that Christina's talking about, they live across the country,
Hmm.
but we were able to connect with them online. And I mean, Christina's talked to one of the wives,
Hmm.
like for years leading up to it. So
Yeah.
it's crazy the
That's
connections
so
you can
neat.
make in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're going on our travels in April. We're actually meeting up with another two mom
Yeah.
family and they have two kids.
Yeah.
So just trying to like, put out there like, oh, we're heading here, if anybody wants to meet up. Like a lot of times we're just chatting with people and they'll tell us where they live and we'll be like, oh my gosh, we're going there. Like we'll tell
Pretty
you
cool.
when we're heading there so we can meet up.
Yeah. Well, if you ever come to New York, I mean, there's a bunch of lesbian and gay couples here, but I know some friends, a gay couple with kids, so
Oh,
we can connect
awesome.
you guys.
Is
Yeah.
it really late in New York?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I know, because we were in
Someone
New York.
New York.
Yeah,
Oh
she
my
said, I
God.
know, she said she was a
Middle
night
of the
owl, and I was
night.
like, wow, thank you for doing this,
No.
because I
So
know
bad
it's
now.
super late for you.
No, it's all good. Well, for those listening, you have to go check out Baby Bailey Mama Drama, which I think is amazing, at Baby Bailey Mama Drama on Instagram. I'll put all of your information in the show notes. But I'm just so grateful that I got to talk to you guys and hear your story. And I also want to encourage those who listen to go look at their YouTube channel, because you have so many videos up there of just the real mama drama that you guys went through. The gritty mama drama, the injections and all. Really amazing. Before I let you go, I have a final question that I'd like both of you to answer. And that is for both Kennedy and Charlotte and any potential little boy or girl who might come along. What's something that you want to leave with them, that you want to tell them now for when they're 18?
I think I want our girls to know that they are strong and can handle anything, and to please continue to go see the beauty in the world, like travel, find those beautiful places.
Oh, that's a good one.
I know, it is a good one. You're gonna have a hard time topping it.
Yeah.
Go ahead, our kids are gonna be listening.
I would tell them that they are so loved and that they always have our love and support, and whatever they come across in the future, whatever they want to be, we are here to help support them.
That is a good one.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, we always say, we're always like, is that who you'll marry? Boy or girl? Doesn't matter to us. You marry whoever you
Yeah.
want. We support your decisions. Do you want to be a boy or a girl? We support your life decisions.
You want to be a princess, or do you want to be a doctor? Okay, whatever you want to be.
I love that.
Very true.
Oh, it's so wonderful. You guys are just beautiful and beautiful humans. You are gonna have to come to New York someday, or I'm gonna have to go to California, and then I can come
Okay.
and I can come hang out with your little girls. This was such a pleasure. Thank you guys so much for taking some time. I'm also super impressed that we started chatting at 7:30 p.m. your time, and both of your kids were down to sleep. Like, that's really amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, that never happens actually.
The Pumping Podcast is a podcast for moms and by moms, and I am your host. I'm not yet a mama. I'm a mama in training. If you're enjoying what you hear, please take a minute on iTunes to subscribe, rate, and review so more mamas out there can find us and listen along while they're pumping or breastfeeding. If you'd like to be a guest and share your story, email me at thepumpingpodcast@gmail.com. You can also email me if you have any questions for any of my guests, and I will reach out, get those answers, and relay them to you in a follow-up episode. A big thank you to my friends Ashley and Kelly for the use of their baby's laughter, and my dear friend Erin Adams for writing my gorgeous theme song. You can follow along on Instagram at The Pumping Podcast, and go ahead and share the podcast with a mama you know. Until next time, keep on pumping.